Good day and welcome to FDM, the channel dedicated to Ferra data models. Today I want to look at the simulation as I've done before, but this time I want to implement some lockdown regulations. And then once the virus has been flushed out of the population, I want to lift those restrictions. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift the restrictions one day too soon. So one day before it's completely flushed out, I will lift the restrictions and then I'm going to look at some of the results. In this video, I'm looking at the results. I'll make a follow-up to this where I discuss the model in more detail and I look at the assumptions and also at the bitmap rendered from this model. So keep an eye out for that, but yeah, I just want to discuss the results. So there's the baseline simulation. Start off with 50 infected individuals. And they transmit the disease as I've discussed in another video. But what's important for this baseline and for the alternatives I present here are 17. Now 17 is the number of days that an individual remain infected. And also during those 17 days an individual will carry the disease over or transmit the disease to somebody he comes into contact with. Now there's probabilities at play and so on. But the 17 days is an assumption and you stay sick for 17 days and you also transmit the disease during those 17 days. So the lockdown, when the lockdown comes into effect, then those who are infected still transmit the disease to those they come into contact with. But those secondary rounds, if you want, the ones that they infect, then no longer infect anybody else. You only have the ones that are sick at that point in time that still continue to transfer the disease. And then after 17 days, nobody transfers the disease any longer. However, the last ones to get the disease remain sick for another 17 days. And there's 1 day overlap, so the disease can be transmitted for another 16 days. Now, the way I simulate this, because I stopped the first round, the second round effects on day 1, you lose another day. So if the lockdown is 33 days, you will flush out the simulation completely. However, if it's 32 days, because of that 1 day that you relax too soon, there's still a few individuals that remain infected. And they were infected. They are second round infections. The first round infections have by now long been flushed out of the system. These are the last remaining second round infections, and then they start a new outbreak. So this is the simulation, and I've calibrated it to be more or less equal to the same data in April, as I discussed in another video. But what I did here is I start with the restrictions on the 11th of April. So all these alternatives are exactly the same up until the 10th of April, and on the 11th of April, the restrictions kick in. Those restrictions remain in place for 32 days, and you can see immediately in these alternatives the number of new infections rapidly decrease, and the total number of infected also starts to decrease. Then after 17 days, there's no more new infections. Remember, there's still some secondary round infected that remain infected, and you see no new infection. So you might be very comfortable to relax the restrictions here because you know it looks as if you flushed the thing completely from the population. However, on day 33, when you open up 1 day too soon, then immediately those last second round infected start infecting the population again, and on the next day you have 1,799 new infections in this alternative. So let's do two alternatives. In this one, those last ones then seed sort of a new simulation and the infections start all over again. And let's use a random probability of 1 in 100. So these guys, they all become healthy. None of them carry or transmit the disease anymore except for 1 in 100. For each one of them, we make a random drawing of 1 in 100. 1 in 100 of them will continue to transmit the disease. That might be you can think of any way in which that might happen. Somebody spat in the basin and somebody touched that and got infected, or there's a multiple of ways in which you can think how this would play out in practice. But here, because of that 1 in 100 probability, there's only 23 new infections, and then from there it starts picking up. Okay, so that's the workings of the simulation, and there are the numbers. But let me go to FDM now to show you some of the outcomes. Okay, so let me open FDM. I loaded that into FDM, and I want to show you the outcome. Okay, so there you see the result. The baseline case where you have no controls in place, no mitigation, the thing just plays out through and infects the whole 100 million population is this green line. Then if you clamp down, that the total or the number of infections on that day rapidly drops to 0, as I've shown. But then because you lift the restrictions 1 day too early, those 1,799 quickly make up, and you have Armageddon all over again. Pretty soon this is much worse than before. Here's the daily increase. You can see the daily increase rapidly drops to 0. You think you've taken care of everything, but then there's a new outbreak, and pretty soon this exceeds your initial problem. Okay, so that's what happens if you lift the restrictions too early. Of course, in all of these simulations, except for the restrictions I've discussed here, there are no other mitigations taking place, no other preventative actions, no other policy intervention or anything like that. This is just a normal transmission mechanism playing out. Then the other one that I discussed, where you retain 1 in 100 of the infected continue to transmit the disease. What you see then is this sort of magenta line for the newly infected, and this sort of purplish line there. So then it's, in a way, this is worse, because you think you've got everything under control. You have here and there maybe something, but everything happens in the next year. So if I go to the next year, you will see that starts becoming a problem a bit later on. So let me just extend this for a year or so. And oh, I've changed the wrong one. Let me just see. I've changed the wrong one. There we go. Okay, so there we go. Now, if you relax too early, you can quickly have big trouble on your hands again. However, if you've got everything under control, even if you relax too early, you might have sort of a problem that can eventually become a big problem. Hopefully, you are geared up for this. You've got mitigation factors in place, and then if you relax too early, you can stomp out these ones, take them down to 0. But you must be careful. If you want to start relaxing, you have to be ready to cope with these with the impact of any remaining infections that gets transmitted to the rest of the population. You have to be geared up to cater for that before you relax. Well, that's it. See you next time. Bye-bye.